Hi, this is Theo from PuckerBlocks.com. Today I'm going to recommend some cheap and affordable art supplies for beginners who are learning to draw. These are the art supplies I'm going to talk about today. Graphite on the left, pen and ink somewhere here, and watercolor supplies. So when you are a beginner, if you don't want to spend too much money, you want to just learn the drawing foundation, having a box of graphite pencil is, I think, the best investment you can make. I have here with me two boxes of pencil. This is a box of random pencils that I bought over the years. Graphite pencils come in different versions, different grade as well. There are the B version of the pencils. For example, this is a 4B pencil, and then there's the HB and or the H pencil. The B is are the soft pencils, so you can use them for shading easily. In addition to the standard graphite pencils, there are also water-soluble graphite. So those are pretty cheap as well. For example, this is the Derwent Sketching water-soluble graphite pencil. So this one is actually 8B. Then I have Watercolor as well. This is also water-soluble. Graphite Aquarelle, this is 4B, and these are quite versatile because you can use them to shade. Oops, notice that the 8B is quite soft. Actually, personally, I find that water-soluble graphite pencils, they are a bit soft. So you might want to get standard graphite pencils as well as water-soluble graphite pencil, so that you can use the standard one for drawing and water-soluble ones for creating ink washes. But do it a bit gently because these are quite brittle. And also get a cheap brush. This is a synthetic brush, some line on bristles here. So you get a cheap brush and get a small bottle to put your water in. I reuse an ink bottle. So once you dip your brush, you can use it to go over the water-soluble graphite. This is a very easy way to get ink washes. So you can buy the graphite pencils as sticks alone, or you can buy them in a set. If you are buying the sticks alone, I recommend you get like 4B, 2B, 6B, and 8B. Skip a step, so don't get like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6B, but just get 2, 4, 6, 8. Also, an eraser is good to have, as well as a pencil sharpener. So this is a good one from Staedtler. Comes with two holes. One is for graphite and color, one is for color pencils. And this is convenient to bring around. If you're buying a box set like this, a color box of graphite pencils or charcoal pencils, this is very convenient because you can bring around and put it in your bag. Together with this, you can draw anywhere. And this box, I think, is under $10. This is a special edition box that I was given, but you can buy this as a box set outside as well. And also, box set like this is probably going to cost you under $20, and you can use it for a very long time. It's well worth the money. If you are really low on the budget, I recommend pencils. So these are $10 and $20 boxes. The other thing I want to show you is this. This is water-soluble graphite. This is called Art Graph. This small tin can costs about US $20, but this is quite fun to use because I find it easier to dissolve the graphite. Again, you need a bottle of water, and you can dissolve the graphite and then apply it onto your paper. So if you want a more luscious graphite wash, this is something to get. This is $20, and it has quite a lot of graphite, so you can use this for a very long time as well. Let's move on to the pen and ink. For pen and ink, I would recommend you get the Uniball pens. Uniball, they come with many different types of pens. Some are waterproof, some are not waterproof. Some are ballpoint, needlepoint, rollerball. The one that I really recommend is this one called the Uniball Signal Gel Stick 0.7. This is actually a gel pen, features rollerball, and this features pigment ink inside. So when you draw and then you spray fixative over this, the ink is not going to break up. And this is incredibly smooth. The drawing experience, I find it to be very enjoyable. And this is really very affordable. You can buy them like in packs of 12 or 10. I mean, the price here that I have is in Singapore dollars. This is 86 cents in Singapore dollars. So this is really very affordable. This is, I think, is one of the best drawing pens if you are into pen and ink. However, you can only get like very uniform strokes, so the thickness will not vary a lot. This is what you get with rollerball points. I do not recommend you get fountain pens because, well, this is a video on budget materials, so I do not recommend fountain pens because they cost a bit more than $20. All the items that I recommend today are under $20 or $10, so this is very good. Another Uniball pen that I have here is the Uniball Vision Elite. Here I have is a Uniball Vision needle. So in other countries, Uniball Vision is also equals to the Uniball I in some other countries. So the branding is a bit different. These are ink pens, and this is a needle point versus a roller ball point. They have the ink system inside, so you can see how much ink is left. What I like about these pens are, well, same thing, the ink is very dark and it's pigmented. So it's really good for drawing, especially if you want to use watercolor in the future. You can apply watercolor over the ink when it is dry. The downside of this pen is, well, you have to wait for the ink to dry. Compared to this Signal Gel Stick, once you draw, it's dry. So that's why this is even better than this more expensive Uniball Vision. But if you want to buy, you can get Vision or get a Signal Gel Stick. I recommend the gel stick. They are very cheap. And next up is you can get a bottle of ink too, not for use with fountain pen, but for use with brush, because you can use the brush and fountain and this bottle of India ink for creating washes. Why I recommend going with black and white first is because it will teach you how to understand value. So it's very good exercise to understand value first before you go into using color. So let me use my brush again. If you want to get an ink bottle, get one with an eyedropper. So usually when I'm using ink like this, I would put maybe a drop here, and then I will add some water to it just to dilute the ink. If I were to use it straight from the bottle, it's going to be very dark. I don't want to do that because I just want to have a light wash. So with an ink bottle, you can have light wash by adding water to it, and you can have different variations of shade. So this is the diluted version. If you use the non-diluted version, then of course this is going to be so much darker. And if you add more water, obviously it's going to be much lighter. So you can get a lot of different variations of shade, of tone with just a brush and an ink bottle. This costs about less than $10. This is Dr. P.H. Martin Bombay Black ink, a type of India ink. And if you want to get the ink bottle, I would suggest you buy a palette as well. This is also under $10. So you can get the brush, the ink bottle, and the palette all under $20. This is just a synthetic brush. Very nice. So I have covered graphite and I have covered ink. So next up, I'm going to move to watercolor. Watercolor can get expensive very quickly because of the precious pigments that are used to create the paints. However, there are also student brands. The two that I recommend, or at least the two that I have used so far that are cheap, would be the Prang half pan that I reviewed earlier, and there's this Winsor & Newton Cotman series, which features student grade watercolors. Comes with 12 colors. This comes with 8 or 16 pens. This is much cheaper. This is less than, Prang is less than $10. This is less than $20. I would recommend, if you have a bit more budget, to go for this Winsor & Newton Cotman series, because the pens here can be replaced easily because these are standard size pens. And when you run out of watercolor, you can just buy individual tubes to squeeze and refill the pens. So that would be more economical. And for $20, this box set can last you for a very long time. Same with this. So let me just show you some the intensity. Oh, actually I have a color chart. I'll just save time and just show you the color chart. Oops. This is the color chart painted from the Cotman series, and you can see that the colors are actually very vibrant, very strong, even for student grade watercolors. And this is quite well worth the money. Last thing I want to talk about is paper. If you are using dry media, then you can just get paper, maybe like copier paper, 80 GSM, 90 GSM. Those you can get like in reams of 500 sheets. Those would be quite cheap and you can draw a lot on those paper. If you want something better, then it's going to be a bit more expensive. For example, this cartridge paper that I'm using is 180 GSM. So this is good for ink washes. The paper doesn't buckle as much because the paper is quite thick. However, this is going to be a bit more expensive. So if you are using pen and ink, you can still go for the 90 GSM paper. Oh, and one thing about these pens are they do not bleed, especially the gel pen. They do not feather, they do not bleed on any sort of a paper. So even if you are using it on lousy paper, this gel stick is going to work. As for ink pens, sometimes they might feather depending on the quality of the paper. So gel stick all the way. As for paper that can take ink washes, I would say maybe about 120 GSM to 200 GSM. If you want to be using watercolor, then you need watercolor paper. Mine is the Daler Rowley Aquafine series. This is a student grade watercolor paper. I buy it cheap so that I can practice my watercolor on it. One thing that I notice in beginners is they tend to not use watercolor paints so much, as in sometimes their ink washes, they come out a bit diluted. It's not as intense and strong. This happens sometimes because if you buy very expensive pigment, you might not want to use so much of the pigment because they are very expensive. So that is why I also recommend you use student grade paints first. You can use as much paint as you want because they are much cheaper. And when you get a hang of them, you can buy the more expensive, the more light, fast, durable paints to use. But when you're starting out, get the student brand. Use a lot of pigment just to try out how strong the colors are. Go very dark, and then after that you can scale back to go much lighter. Just because you are using graphite doesn't mean that your drawing would be less interesting than a colored watercolor sketch. Let me show you some of my graphite sketches. Actually, graphite ink and wash. This is a sketch that I drew from some tall building. I use water-soluble graphite because I want to save time. I don't want to use watercolor, so I just use water-soluble graphite. One thing to note here is the range of value. It doesn't go until it's very dark. The only black line things that you see here are actually the pen lines, which are totally 100% black. Other than that, the gray scale, the gray tones, these are much lighter, and I use water-soluble graphite for this. This is also a sketch from some building. This is not very obvious. This is a sketch inside a shopping mall. These are escalators going down. So just now I was mentioning that you should get 2B, 4B, 6B, and 8B. The reason is because you want to get a range of value from light to dark. All these sketches that I'm showing you right now, the ink washes are a bit light, so I'm not getting anywhere near this level of darkness. So if you want to get real dark, and I recommend you get real dark when you are a beginner, get 6B, get 8B, so you can get very dark washes, and you will learn faster that way. This was a sketch that I drew in 2012. Oh, that's 4 years ago. So overall, what do I recommend? I would say get a box of pencils. You get more mileage with this, and if you get a box like this, this is quite portable. You can bring it anywhere. If you have a portable sharpener, you can draw anywhere. Or if you want to buy single sticks, make sure you get a good range of grades from 2B to 8B. I would recommend 2, 4, 6, 8. If you have a bit more budget, then you can get pen and ink. The pen I recommend is the Uniball gel stick. The one I'm using is 0.7. You can get this in like boxes of 10 or 12 or I think less than 10 US dollar. This is quite affordable. And if you want to try some washes, I recommend the Dr. P.H. Martin Black India ink, because there's this little dropper here that you can just use it to drop one drop of ink, and you can add some water to dilute it. Avoid those ink bottles with no dropper because it's quite difficult to get ink out of the bottle if there's no dropper. There's also the water-soluble graphite that I mentioned earlier. The difference between the wash from the graphite and the wash from the ink is the texture. You can get an even wash easier with the ink wash. This is the diluted ink wash. This is the undiluted. So you can see that these are actually flat washes compared to the water-soluble graphite, which is quite patchy and can be a bit distracting if you are a beginner. So I would recommend you get an ink bottle with a cheap synthetic brush, and that's going to last you for quite long as well. So for beginners, get the black and white graphite set, pen and ink. Do not go into watercolor first because I find that watercolor can be a bit confusing. There are so many colors, so many mixtures, there are so many things to learn. It is best to start with something simple like black and white. Just now I was showing you some of my sketches. I actually spent 1 year or so just doing black and white ink sketches with graphite washers. I find that I learn a bit more. Now that I learned watercolor, I find that I appreciate what I learned back then with just graphite. I also find that as a beginner, sometimes you do not use as much pigment because they might cost a bit more. However, with graphite, they are so cheap, you can just use as much as possible. When you're a beginner, just try to get the darkest tone possible and the lightest tone possible. That's why I recommend the 2, 4, 6, 8B pencils. That's all for my recommendations today. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the comment section below. I will answer as many questions as possible. And if you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, do so for more art product reviews, sketching tips and techniques, sketchbook features. That's all. See you in the next video. Bye.